Hey, AgEcon, welcome to just one more as we're going to be looking at cost benefit analysis and marginal analysis to end out Unit 2 on microeconomics, and we'll start out Unit 3 in our next lecture, which is going to be focusing on macroeconomics. So to finish off microeconomics, cost benefit analysis is a perfect fit. It's something that we use in our daily lives, and we're going to see how it's applied here today in this lecture. So we're going to start off by reviewing concepts and risk from our last presentation. We're going to talk about why we should mitigate risks and how that connects to marginal analysis and cost benefit analysis. And then we're going to compare the different types of costs: direct costs, indirect costs, fixed costs, variable costs, all of that stuff relating to cost benefit analysis. And then we're going to finish off by looking at the law of diminishing returns, which is going to teach us a little bit about what it means to be a satisfied and happy customer, especially when we're looking at all you can eat type situations. So buckle in. It's going to be a great experience. We're going to learn a lot today. We're going to get started as usual with our learning targets. So there's several of them today. I believe there's 2 slides worth. So we'll be able to evaluate how risk concepts relate to cost benefit analysis concepts. We'll be able to describe the importance of incurring costs in order to mitigate risk when operating a business in food or ag. We'll be able to compare and contrast different types of costs associated with operating a business. We'll be able to identify examples of utility in our own lives. We'll be able to calculate total and marginal utility. We'll be able to construct and interpret a marginal utility graph using the data provided. We'll be able to describe the law of diminishing marginal utility in your own words, and we'll be able to evaluate a decision based on data collected from marginal analysis. So a lot to cover today, but I promise it's going to go pretty darn quick. Okay, just to review, what is risk? Who takes risks? And what is the difference between subjective and objective risks? Okay, so hopefully you know the answers to these questions. We're going to go through them real quick in case you don't, but I would know these in preparation for your Unit 2 exam. So what is risk? Risk is the potential to give up or lose something of value, right? So values could be personal health, physical health, social status, maybe even wealth. So when we are playing with this uncertainty, we are incurring a risk, and that risk can be positive or negative. Doesn't necessarily always have to be negative, even though it generally has a pretty negative perception in the media and in our daily lives. Who takes risks? We all take risks. Every time we go to a restaurant and we bite into a burger, as we talked about last week, or as every time we decide to cook meals at home, or every time we even decide to go outside, we take a risk. We could get hit by a car, we could get struck by lightning, or maybe we'll get $1 million. Maybe we'll get to go on a game show and be interviewed on the street or something, right? There's a lot of different risks that we can take because we are not 100% certain about everything that's going to happen in our lives. And then what is the difference between subjective and objective risks? Okay, so one of them is you can use quantitative data and calculate. One of them is more based off of emotions or feelings, okay? So subjective is going to be more opinion and touchy-feely, and objective is going to be based more on concrete data and evidence, okay? So hopefully that review helps you to remember and recall some of that important information about risk, and we'll see that connect here today. So again, we talked about risk mitigation. We talked a lot about insurance and crop health and stuff like that the last lecture, but it's important, again, to reiterate, to mitigate and reduce our risks. And when we choose to participate in any market scenario as a consumer or as a producer, we are taking risks and making sacrifices, right? Goes back to trade-offs and opportunity cost at the beginning of the semester as well. But food safety is an important applicable topic for us in an agricultural econ course. Okay, there's a lot of costs that are incurred to make sure our food is safe, a lot of potential risks if food is deemed to be unsafe. We are taking a lot of risks when we are making food for guests at our home, or when we choose to go to Applebee's or go to Burger King or go to Dairy Queen, Raising Cane's, Taco Bell, wherever. Every time we choose to participate in that marketplace, we are taking a risk because we are uncertain if the food that we get is going to be safe until we wait and get sick or not sick. Costs drive decisions in the marketplace for both consumers and producers, but a lot of places, especially because the law tells them they need to, they put forward a lot of different costs, and they invest a lot of money into making sure that food is safe and food is healthy, food is secure. Okay. So to look at the different types of costs, there's a lot of different costs that are involved in an agricultural business. Direct costs are the price of inputs times the quantity of those inputs that you use directly in providing a good or service. If you did not provide the good or service, you would incur no cost. So direct cost is the actual cost of providing that good or service, the raw cost. Okay. Indirect, or sometimes referred to as sunk costs, are costs that are incurred whether or not you provide the service or good. Indirect costs can be linked to depreciation of assets, interest costs from loans to undertake a project, and insurance. So if we look at the meme to the right, when it doesn't snow and you realize your lift tickets are now a sunk cost. So if you have a ski pass or a season pass or a lift ticket and it doesn't snow or the snow melts, that's a sunk cost. You're already incurring that. However, a direct cost could be when you show up to the ski resort and you go ahead and you purchase some skis because you don't have any, or you rent skis. Those are direct costs because you are using them in that moment. But an indirect cost is something that you paid for up front that may or may not end up being used to undertake a project or service or good. Okay. Opportunity costs, again, nice review. The cost of the next best option that is foregone when making a decision. So direct costs, indirect costs, and opportunity costs are the three main types of costs that we're going to be doing in an activity here coming up. And then the difference between fixed and variable costs kind of illustrated very well on that graph over there. So fixed costs are the baseline. This is how much it's going to cost no matter how much you produce. And variable costs are flexible, and they depend on how much you produce, right? So if you think of, if you go on a taxi ride, okay, most of the time you're going to get a flat fee when you show up to the taxi, maybe $5, and then you'll get 10 cents per mile. So the $5 flat fee is your fixed costs, and your variable costs is how many miles you go. Another example could be electricity, right? So if you decide to use just a little bit of electricity, you're not going to get charged as much as you would if you had a lot of electricity. That is an example of a variable cost, okay? So on the following slide, consider the costs of foodborne illness itself. So let's assume that we get sick, and there are doctors and medical staff that need to assist us in healing. So the items on the table are specific costs to foodborne illnesses obtained from the United States Department of Ag's or USDA's Economic Research Service website. Classify each of the costs as direct, indirect, or sunk, or opportunity costs by circling your classification choice. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead, have you pause this and jot your answers down in a notebook, and then we will return back in a moment to reveal the answers. Okay. All right, so now that we've had a chance to identify direct, indirect, and opportunity costs for these different events that could occur when we get sick from a foodborne illness, let's see how we did. All right, treatment, medications or antibiotics, recall of product by manufacturer, productivity losses at work, and travel to hospital. Those are all examples of direct costs, things that we will incur up front as a result of getting sick, right? Indirect costs, on the other hand, are the facilities and equipment used to treat the patients and the ambulance used to transport to the hospital, right? Because these are things that are incurred indirectly. We still need them, but they are incurred indirectly. Okay, and then opportunity costs would be loss of work time for you, premature death, loss of recreation time, and the doctor that you were working with, his missed or her missed golf tee time. Those are all examples of opportunity costs, things that you are sacrificing or could occur in the event of this foodborne illness infecting you. Okay, so hopefully this was a nice review. Direct, indirect, and opportunity costs are kind of a little bit complicated and challenging to understand. So if this was challenging for you, maybe watch the rest of this video and then come back and review these. Otherwise, we will share with you some additional resources to help you understand the difference between these three costs. Okay. The costs of food safety. Is it worth it? I think it's worth it. And we're going to do a little bit of an activity here for you guys to simulate that yourselves and determine, is food safety a cost that's actually worth it? Okay. So to simulate it, we're going to have you watch the video that we put together below and then complete the Google Sheets template provided by your instructor to determine the cost and value of food safety and what that means for supply and demand and things like that. Okay, so I'm going to have you pause and complete that activity, and when you are finished, you may return here and we'll continue on. All right, so now we're looking ahead at cost-benefit analysis and marginal utility. This is a big, important topic that is relevant for all of us. When we choose to make a decision, it's important to think at the margin, like we talked about toward the end of Unit 1, thinking about what it would be like if I consumed or did one more of this, right? So another way to measure what we should or should not do is through utility. And utility is basically the satisfaction that we get from doing an action or getting a good or service provided to us. So marginal costs are the costs incurred by adding one additional unit. We know that. We reviewed that in Unit 1. Therefore, we know that marginal net utility, going down towards the bottom, must be the satisfaction received from consuming one additional unit, right? So total utility is the amount of satisfaction overall given or received from consuming a given quality from a service or good. And all of this satisfaction is generally represented in units called utils. Okay, so sometimes in the examples that we'll see later on, we don't really utilize utils. We utilize utils. We use dollars to compare and contrast the marginal utility of performing it or receiving a good. Okay, so at the end of the day, our goal here is to maximize our utility and what we are getting every day. So we want to get the most bang for our buck, essentially, is what we're trying to get here. So we want to maximize our utility to the greatest extent possible. We don't want to lose utility. We want to gain to the greatest potential and then stop at that point. Okay. So we're going to do a little bit of an example here. And if you have a snack or a food item at home that you want to play along with me with this activity, go for it. Otherwise, kind of hang on for the ride. But I have these here Fruit Smiles. They're my favorite snack. And I'm going to perform a demonstration on how marginal utility works, okay? So in here, I have several Fruit Smiles. Looks like I hit the jackpot. Red and blue are actually my favorite color. So every time I eat one of these, I'm going to tell you how I'm feeling, okay? Or just in general, okay? First one, going great. I love it. Tastes really good. Second one, probably not as good as the first. But still pretty tasty, right? Number 3, still enjoying it. Pretty tasty. I'm going to mix it up and throw a red one in next. Number 4 is still going good. Still satisfied, still happy. Good life choice. Number 5. Still good. 6. And as I'm eating this, kind of compare this to when you go to an all-you-can-eat buffet, right? Number 7. As you eat at an all-you-can-eat buffet, you start to get full, right? Number 8. And as you start to get full, or you start to get sick of a food, you lose satisfaction, right? Number 9. In my case, I'm still enjoying my Fruit Smiles, right? I've gone through about a package now. Usually I can do 1, 1.5, and then I'm good. But I'm pretty hungry this morning. So 9, I'm still going. I like Fruit Smiles. I want to keep eating. I'm not completely satisfied. Ooh, got a pink one. Number 10. Got a little flavor variety there. Makes me want to keep eating more. 11. Still enjoying it. Maybe not as good as the first few. 12. All right, number 13 right here. All right, next one, 14. Now at this point, I could give or take another one. I'm kind of over it. It still tastes pretty good, but I've had enough for now. Maybe in a few hours I would take more, but at this point, it's going to cost me more energy and more like pain to eat another one than it's actually worth. But I'm going to keep eating for the sake of the example. Number 15. Again, it just isn't tasting very good to me anymore. I kind of did overkill. 16. So this could be kind of compared to when you go to the all-you-can-eat buffet. 17. And you go up for that second dessert, right? At that point, you're probably pretty full, and the last thing you probably need is a second brownie or another bowl of ice cream. 18. But yet you do it anyways because you think you want to get your money's worth. These fruit smiles, I am not getting as much enjoyment out of them now as I would if I would save these for this afternoon or tomorrow because I'm getting sick of the flavor and the texture. Just pretty gummy and all over my mouth right now. Number 19. I'm going to do one more after this. Power through. And number 20. All right. So as you saw, and as you might have guessed, my satisfaction over time decreased. The best one that I had was that first one. And that could have been because it was blue, and blue is my favorite fruit smile color. But I would say I was craving those fruit smiles. I wanted a fruit smile. I got it. I was satisfied. But then I started losing satisfaction because nothing can match that first one, especially because I haven't had fruit smiles in over 3 days, right? So I was really craving that fruit smile. Okay. So here's kind of a chart that we're going to be using moving forward for the rest of this presentation, and you'll see it again on your unit exam and in the future. Units consumed, utility gained, total utility, marginal utility, okay? Most of the charts aren't going to have utility gained, but I put that on here just so you can kind of see my satisfaction as I was eating. Okay, so that first unit I consumed, I was very satisfied. I was happy. I was excited. Like, yes, this is so good. But then the second one, I was still enjoying it, but I wasn't enjoying it as much. So I gained 30 utils, or units of satisfaction. Remember, that means utils. I gained 30 utils on that first one. On the second one, I gained 29. The third one, I gained 28. And then 26 on my fourth one, and so on and so forth. Okay. Remember at 14, I made the comment of I could eat more, but it doesn't really pay for me right now. 14 was when I said, I think I need to stop here. But I kept going, and then I started going negative. I lost utils. I lost satisfaction because I was overeating, and I was overindulging in the fruit smiles. Okay? It would have been better at that point for me to mix it up and grab a clementine or grab some crackers or some chips or maybe have a handful of raspberries or something like that to mix it up. I would have gained more satisfaction by doing that than continuing on with the fruit smile trend. Okay? Now, total utility then is adding the utils together as you go down. It's a cumulative total. Okay? We'll get to that next, but this is a graph that kind of shows that over time I lost utils, right? I had 30 utils on that first fruit snack, and by the end I was down to, what was it, negative 27? So I lost utils from each subsequent unit that I consumed, each subsequent fruit smile that I ate. I lost utility, I lost satisfaction, okay? Total utility then, as I mentioned, is going to be your utils combined and a cumulative total. So we are going to add up total utility all the way down to the 20th fruit smile. Okay. Marginal utility then is going to be your total utilities minus each other. So 59 minus 30 equals 29. So, and if you wanted to get really complicated, it's technically delta. So delta means change. The change in quantity taken into account with the change in utility, or delta TU, okay? So this is basically what we come up with. So my marginal utility, spoiler alert, is going to equal the utility gain for all of these, right? That's why I mentioned in most of the examples we give you, we're not going to have that utility gained column. That was just as a visual for you to remember my satisfaction as I was eating those fruit smiles, okay? But most of the time, we're not going to have the utility gained column, okay? So marginal utility is going to be the difference between total utility of one quantity and another quantity, okay? So I want you to go ahead, copy this down on paper, and calculate the total utility and the marginal utility for all 20 fruit smiles as practice, and then we will see how you did. So hit pause, do what you got to do the math. All right, let's see how you did. Okay, so we see here, if we were correct, we should have ended with a total utility of 157 and a marginal utility ending at negative 27. Again, all of these marginal utilities are copy-paste with the utility gained because I measured in the utility gained how much utility I gained from eating one additional fruit smile, and that's what marginal utility is also attempting to measure as well. Okay, so later on, know that marginal utility is simply going to be subtracting the total utilities of two different quantities, okay? If I were to graph my total utility and my marginal utility, again, you would see that my total utility has a nice curve shape, right? But there's a point where it peaks at the top. I want you to remember that, okay? And I want you to remember that marginal utility is sloping downward, okay? So when should I have stopped eating and why? Okay, kind of think about this. If we look back at our data set or if we just look at our graph, we would see that at 14 fruit smiles, I was feeling kind of, I could give or take this at this point, probably just not eat anymore. That's when we plateau. That is our point. That is our prime point. We should have stopped at 14 fruit smiles. Okay. The reason why is because after that, I started losing overall satisfaction. Now, I'm probably not going to want fruit smiles for a week, right? Because I have too much sugar going on in my mouth right now. It's giving me a bad taste, okay? What happened after this point in time, we just talked about that, but we started losing satisfaction, okay? This is known, 14 in this example, is known as our diminishing point, okay? We start losing satisfaction after we consume that many units. Why is it important to know the best place to stop? Well, kind of think about it. In the context of our lives, it could tell us, okay, this is how I can better allocate or spend my resources. If I'm stranded on an island, and I just decide I'm going to stock up and eat all of these fruit smiles right now, I'm not going to be very, very satisfied because I just ate all of these fruit smiles. But if I were to hold off and save some of those fruit smiles for a later date, I could rejuvenate that satisfaction and be more happy as a result because I have those fruit smiles and I'm consuming them at a later date. I'm gaining more satisfaction initially because remember, the biggest point on our marginal utility was that first fruit smile. We started losing utility as we consumed more units, okay? But again, going back to scarcity and the pig principle, you and me, we're both pigs, right? We want to consume n plus 1 units, right? So most of the time, we just keep eating and eating and eating, like myself included, because I'm a big eater. But we really should stop because we're wasting our own resources and we are getting ourselves sick, essentially. Examples of this in your own life that you can think of for me, all-you-can-eat buffets, right? I want to eat more, I want to get my money's worth, but in reality, I'm just making myself sick and I don't enjoy the food as much anymore, right? Hopefully you can think of some additional examples as well. We're going to keep chugging along though. Again, this graphic kind of summarizes the law of diminishing marginal utility. Again, that first burger, you're hungry, you eat that burger, you get instant satisfaction, excuse me. The second burger, you're still kind of hungry. You get some satisfaction, but that third burger, you're just, you can't do it. Okay, you don't get very much satisfaction, if any. Okay, so basically, again, marginal utility measured in utils, which is units of satisfaction, and you start to lose that utility as you consume more and more units, and at a certain point, you will plateau. That is when you stop, and if you keep consuming, you start diminishing overall and you lose total satisfaction, okay? Now, the law of diminishing marginal utility tells us that the more of a good a consumer has, the less marginal utility and additional unit contributes to overall satisfaction, if all other things remain unchanged. This can also be applied to spending choices as well, and dollars become the utils for these instances, as I previously explained. Okay, so we're going to do a practice problem together. Okay, there's going to be 2 of them. So the first one we can kind of walk through together. The second one, I think you should hit pause and probably do it on your own. But if you're feeling advanced and want to take a risk, you can hit pause after I explain this and after you look at the chart to see what it's going to be looking like, and then practice it on your own, right? Okay, for your June birthday party, you're willing and able to buy up to $52 worth of pizzas, okay? I'm going to tell you, you can't spend more than $52, okay? You don't have more than $52 budgeted, okay? So $52 is the most you can spend. Jimmy's Pizza Shop's anniversary is in June, so the prices are extra low to celebrate for their business, right? You're wondering how much pizza you should buy, so use marginal analysis to help you decide. 3 steps. Step 1, look at the following chart on the next slide to calculate marginal utility for each quantity change. Easy. Number 2, create a graph to depict utility and total utility. And number 3, determine how many pizzas to buy. Okay. So I kind of broke it down, units purchased, the total utility. So again, total utility is adding up from 1 pizza to 2 pizzas to 3 pizzas. So at 2 pizzas are worth $28, okay? And then marginal utility, again, is when we subtract quantity change over utility change, okay? So 28 minus 15, that gives you your marginal utility, okay? Then you're going to graph both of the lines, so the total utility and marginal utility, okay? So hit pause if you want to, otherwise we'll just keep going. Step 1, calculate our marginal utility. Still got some fruit smash stuck in my mouth. Sorry about that. So the first marginal utility is obviously going to be 15 because we're starting at 0, goose egg, right? But unit 2, when we buy 2 pizzas, we are going to have a marginal utility of $13 because 15 to 28, 28 minus 15 is $13. 2 minus 1 is 1. So we gain 1 unit, and in that 1 unit, we have $13 change. Okay, so $13. Then $12.50, $11.50, 8, 5, 3, and 0. Okay, so that gives you your marginal utility, and then your total utility is going to be over here as well. Okay. This is what our graph is going to look like. So our total utility is going to eventually plateau because we have a $0 change between 7 and 8. And then our marginal utility is going to be downward sloping again. So we're going to lose dollars in this case for each unit. The price is going to go down, or at least our perception of how much that pizza is worth is going to go down as we start getting more and more units, right? And this, honestly, friends, relates very well to the law of supply and demand, right? Remember, demand goes downwards, it's downward sloping, so as our quantities increase, the price that we're willing and able to pay for an additional unit also goes down. So it all kind of connects back, you see? So we then should know that $52 is our budget, so we should purchase 4 units of pizza, or 4 pizzas, and the marginal utility then from going from 3 to 4 is going to be $11.50, okay? So our answer here for this problem set is 4. 4 pizzas should be purchased from Jimmy's Pizza for your birthday, okay? That is going to be the best value if you are willing and able to pay $52, right? Hopefully that makes sense. And if not, you can go back. We have plenty of examples for you in this presentation, and also there's lots of them on the internet that you can find, and I'm sure we'll provide you with some more practice later on too. Okay, practice number 2. I want you to try this on your own, okay? You have up to $20, and $20 goes a long way at Taco Bell, let me tell you. $20 to spend on Taco Bell nacho meals for your birthday party. 1 meal feeds 1 person. However, you eat free at Taco Bell for your birthday. Okay, so you don't have to factor you into this problem. How many people should you invite to the party? Okay, number 1, look at the chart to calculate marginal utility for each quantity change. Okay, remember you're going to, all that formula I gave you, so you're going to subtract the dollar changes for each of the units. Okay, number 2, create a graph to depict marginal and total utility. And number 3, determine how many meals you will buy and how many people you will invite. Okay, so remember, Should be pretty similar for that answer. Hint, hint. Okay? Remember, because you eat free for your birthday. All right. So why don't we hit pause and do this on our own after you see the data here, okay? And then make your graph and we'll compare answers, okay? All right. So now that we've had a chance to determine our marginal utility, create our graph, and figure out how many people to invite to our birthday bash, let's see how we did, okay? So our marginal utility, again, we are going to take 9 minus 5 to get $4 and 2 minus 1 to get 1 unit change. So we take $4 over 1 unit purchased to get $4 for our marginal utility. Now, the reason why I give you that elaborate formula is so that in case we have a larger quantity change, not saying that we will or won't on a test or something, but you know that's how you determine the marginal utility per unit, okay? But here it's pretty straightforward. You don't even have to divide. You can just do 9 minus 5, 1250 minus 9, 15 minus 1250, okay? Marginal utility. Hopefully your answers resemble something like that. When we graph it, remember our marginal utility is going to be downward sloping, just like our demand curve, and our total utility is going to be bow curved, okay? So that is what our graphs kind of look like overall, okay? So we see that our, again, blue line, our marginal utility is downward sloping, our total utility is upward sloping. And then we determine that we can invite 6 individuals to our party and we will purchase 6 meals because remember, we are free for our birthday for 7 people total, 6 invitations, 6 meals are purchased, and that marginal utility is going to be a $2 meal between 5 and 6, okay? So overall, we see that as we purchase more and more units, the price goes down per unit, the way this problem is set up. And therefore, we are able to invite more individuals to our party, okay? Hopefully, marginal and total utility kind of makes sense. The key takeaways that I think you should know from this section of our lecture, though, are how to calculate total and marginal utility, okay? And also, how to determine what a graph is going to look like. Because remember, total utility is going to be taking in account all of the marginal utilities. Therefore, we know that it's going to be upward sloping and marginal utility is going to be downward sloping. And I would also know that there is a certain point, and that is called the diminishing point or the point of diminishing marginal returns. That is when we start to go down. And in both of these examples with the Jimmy's Pizza and the Taco Bell example, we didn't see that because I think it's kind of hard to believe that a restaurant's just going to just pay you to take their food. But in that first example where I was eating Fruit Smiles, I did start to lose total utility because my marginal utility was going to be starting to become very negative. Okay, I was losing satisfaction as I was enjoying, or as I was eating, wasn't enjoying it at that point, eating additional units of Fruit Smiles. Okay, so just to recap, hopefully you're able to evaluate how risk concepts relate to cost-benefit analysis concepts. You're able to describe the importance of incurring costs in order to mitigate risk, as we did that activity simulation. Number 3, comparing and contrasting different types of costs associated with operating a business. So again, we have our direct costs, which are things that are incurred regardless, like upfront. Indirect costs are sunk costs. Again, kind of like buying a ski ticket and not having there be any snow. It's a sunk cost. You're kind of stuck with it. And then opportunity costs, the value of the next best thing. Okay, then we also have our fixed costs and our variable costs. Our fixed costs are things that are incurred automatically, that flat fee, and our variable costs vary depending on how much we use or how many miles we travel or how many watts of energy we use in a month, okay? Number 4, we can evaluate examples of utility in our own lives, going to an all-you-can-eat buffet. Number 5, calculating total and marginal utility. Remember, marginal utility, the formula is change in total utility divided by change in quantity. We can construct and interpret a marginal utility graph using provided data. Next one, we can describe the law of diminishing marginal utility or returns in your own words. And the last one, you can evaluate a decision based on data collected from marginal analysis. So you can know how many units to purchase or how many Fruit Smiles to enjoy. Obviously, I overdid it today. But using marginal analysis as a tool in your toolkit, you are better able to understand how much or how little to consume and when you will start to lose overall satisfaction. So That's it for microeconomics. I hope you enjoyed it. We're going to prepare for our exam now, and then we are going to dive into macroeconomics, which studies the economy of many, many, many microeconomies overall. So we'll learn about trade policies, we'll learn about taxes, we'll learn about all of that stuff in Unit 3. So hang tight. It's going to be a fun ride. Thank you so much for following along today. And if you have any questions whatsoever, feel free to reach out and we will be glad to assist you. Have a great day and good luck in your preparations.